Hello, my name's Professor Rachel Julian. I'm at Leeds Beckett University in the UK. In this video podcast, we're going to be talking about how once we've involved people throughout our research project in participatory research and they've helped design the research question and collect the data and you've got some findings, so you've done the analysis together, how do we carry on and involve people in disseminating the results and the findings from the research and achieving impact of the academic research? All too often, a criticism of research that's done is that it remains unused and unapplied, or it just sits on a shelf somewhere, or it's not written up in such a way that the results are useful or by anybody. And one problem is that academics sometimes just think about publishing results in academic journals, which are absolutely not accessible to most people in communities. But there is a sort of a growing interest within academic work that when we do research and we find out something new, that those research findings should be applied, that they should have some impact on the world and the communities. And there's a really obvious way of thinking about this in participatory research, because the communities where that research might be applied and can be used and make changes have been involved with you right from the beginning. They're the ones who helped design the question that you're asking. They're the ones who have helped get that data, even provided some of that data. They've helped analyse and understand what the findings are, what new knowledge was produced through your research. And so it's only natural that they then can become involved in telling other people, in making sure that those results are happening. So whether or not they are results where they can actually have some agency and do the changes themselves, maybe about the way they include people or the conversations or the way their community works. But even they can then articulate those findings to policymakers, to authorities, to other institutional processes, by using that as evidence to support the need for change. So we're going to think about the ways in which we can actually get information to people by thinking about what is going to be produced as a result of your research, and who is it that you want to read or listen to your results. The obvious output from a research project is to produce a report. But I think we have to ask ourselves, does anyone actually want a report? If the funders don't want one, and not all of them do, and the beneficiaries don't want, you need to think about what do people want? What would be appropriate? What would be engaging? And what's going to help you make sure that right at the end of your research project, you're still having an engaged community participating within the research. Let's first consider what is going to be produced as a result of your research. So however you've collected data in whatever form, if you've got numbers and statistics or photos or artwork or transcripts, anything like that, you can use all of that in lots of different ways to explain what you did and what you found out. So it might be that you've got diagrams that can show, and alongside that sort of like graphs that are really visual. Quite often you'll find that people who are using their research findings deliberately to make impact, particularly with people who are used to absorbing a lot of information, diagrams, graphs and maps are really easy ways to communicate large, complex data sets to people in a relatively short period of time. Or if we think about what works in influencing policymakers and decision makers, and although they often want numbers and statistics, it's the emotion and personal stories and narratives that can really make an issue real to them. So finding a way in which you can share those with people is very powerful. You may also find that it's appropriate to produce music. Whether or people compose things or use some of the music collected in the research, as well as artwork. They can all be used for people themselves to be able to share their story, so it can raise the voices of people, which is an immediate and added impact. You may also, as a result of your research, have literature reviews. And so those can start to define the field, as well as methodological reviews. You could have produced case studies in there, and those can be added to the next project, and even databases that go on to be shared. Your results could be presented at events that you hold. They could be community events, celebrations, they could be policy and influence events and networking, building networks out of the research. You could create physical models to demonstrate maybe sort of like a desired future, the end result of what you can find. You could be trying to explain your research in very simple terms. Try the elevator speech. Can you explain the results of your research within 2 minutes? Can you get to the core of what you're talking about? We can have exhibitions, photographic displays. People can be illustrating and making cartoons to explain the results. And then you can get to a wider audience. People in the community themselves, the participants, can help design and create the actual results, as well as, of course, policy briefs, academic articles, websites, and then being represented on other people's websites in order to broaden your readership. So there's a lot in this dissemination phase. Once you've got a wide range of dissemination products, of outputs that you're going to produce, you also want to take care that you think about who is it you want to read or listen to or use the results that you've got. And those different stakeholders will need communicating with in different formats. So if a part of the desire of your research output is that you want to influence academics or future research or teaching within universities, then absolutely you need to produce some of your findings in academic journals, because that's where the bulk of that work it happens. And to some extent, policymakers also use some of these. But if your key target audience is policymakers who are traditionally very short of time, difficult to access, then you need to be publishing in places that they already read. So either you get papers to committees where they have to read and be presented with all of that, or you're featured in online webcast summaries, documents that they are already subscribed to and participate in. So, for example, online news forums, so like Open Democracy or The Conversation, both are designed to get research into the eyes of policymakers. So you can find out which one is right for the policy group that you're working for. And that 2-minute synopsis, that 2-minute being able to explain what is the core essence of importance out of your research is very important. So remember, if you're trying to influence policy, you have to be aware that they're very short on time, and they are so they're not going to look at the whole depth of what you've done. If you want your research to be predominantly a community-based output, then those two forms are not going to work. They're not going to read academic articles, and nor are they going to sort of like access the same forums as policymakers. So, and it has to be in a form that fits their sort of cultural and community focus and things. So it could be that sort of like you can use visual storytelling. It could be that music and a cultural event is the most appropriate way for even all of those participants who've been working with you over all this long time actually get to share the story of what they've done and what found out with other people. And that is a very empowering part of creating something, and that has a direct impact on the participants. If you have collected numbers, then as well as sort of graphs and spreadsheets, try creating an infographic, and there's software you can do that. If part of your research is about trying to get it adopted into general public awareness or general understanding, then you might have to think of more expressive forms or creative forms that have a longer life shelf, that they'll be accessible, like calendars with messages on them for each month, or a game that people would buy and play together. If you want it adopted into improving practice of organisations, then they're going to need things like toolkits or training programs or apps that people can navigate on their own in order that people do reflective practice and use what you find out. If there's a particular sector of the public you want to reach with your research, for example, you found a way in which sort of like single parent families can be made to be more resilient, then you can find a form they'll engage with. It could be posters in places where that particular part of the population go to, or some existing program that they attend that you can collaborate with. If your research findings you find are widely relevant and actually loads of people need to know about it, you could use broader messages like social media, workshops, campaign materials. And if it's an event, you could find a gap in a network, for instance. If you found places where people need to be brought together in order to improve practice or progress towards a particular goal, then actually a networking event can be a really useful research output. Your research might have found out that people can't imagine what a future scenario might be like. A future city, if you're thinking about adapting to climate change, people can't imagine what it would be like, sort of like without water, without oil, without cars. And so actually using physical models, either ones you can touch or scenarios online, helps them that they can plan and think about sort of transitions and things that they're going to have to load. So absolutely, because this is all about participation and participatory participation by communities, we want to look at co-creating the outputs. So participants making a radio play, doing some creative writing. You might have knowledge brokers who make a video about the research findings with people speaking for themselves about what they've done and what they've found out. So if you want to amplify it, use existing sources and think about who might benefit from hearing about what you've done. And this brings us neatly to the end. The benefit of doing participatory research is that the people who have in the past been subject of research, where researchers have taken data and moved away, can now directly benefit from being participants in the research. So not only do we create data and information and find research programs that are directly relevant to communities and are more likely to be implemented and acted upon, it's also that we're changing the lives of people through their participation in research. Research itself can change things. It can make things better. It's not programming, it's not service delivery, but by investigating and understanding the complex and often hidden social structures and systems that underpin inequalities, exclusion, and other forms of social structure, we are able to think about changing. This is a way in which research can be empowering. No research is easy, but this, although it takes time and a huge commitment, the skills that the researchers gain from engaging with the communities and the skills that the communities gain from participating in research will build and change over time and can bring immense rewards. Thank you.